Welcome to Self-Helpful. I'm your guide, Kevin Miller, and I curate the sea of new personal development messages to bring the most influential leaders onto this show. Join me as I question my guests to better understand their counsel so we can all integrate the wisdom into our lives, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. The Self-Helpful podcast is presented by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping coaches. Visit Ziglar.com. Hello, Self-Helpful listeners, and welcome to our Peak Wellness episode, where we seek to strengthen our bodies, our foundations, and build our lives on top of them. In this episode, understand and mitigate adrenal fatigue. The Mayo Clinic defines adrenal fatigue as a lay term applied to a collection of nonspecific symptoms such as body aches, fatigue, nervousness, sleep disturbances, and digestive problems. And goes on to say your adrenal glands produce a variety of hormones that are essential to life. The medical term adrenal insufficiency refers to inadequate production of one or more of these hormones as a result of an underlying disease or surgery. Dr. James, my co-host, medical doctor and functional medicine expert, we unpack the concepts here so you can discern if some of your issues extend beyond a mere lack of energy and into a true adrenal problem. And then, of course, what to do about it. The key is recovery, but sleep alone is not enough. You're about to hear more. Reminder, you can also watch these full episodes of any show on YouTube. Just search for Self-Helpful with Kevin Miller. All right, the title, Adrenal Fatigue. But, Dr. James, I want to premise it with, well, I'll start off with the reason why we had a bunch of people on the magic pill. Remember our magic pill question? Yeah. What would you solve? You know, Sarah said fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Anthony said more energy. This one's Jody Tootin. I know Jody. She says, I've been dealing with adrenal fatigue. I had it licked and then had another baby, number 10.
Oh, well.
Yeah. There you go.
Let's not use her as the common example.
Well, okay. It's cute. But they're also, well, she says it's been harder to not have to take a nap every day, especially since I'm still nursing. So I would love to get rid of the nap time need. I'm on course to do it. Great supplements, getting more exercise, eating well, etc. It's just the time to heal completely. Now they are a very healthy family.
Yeah.
So they're on par with us from, really, so that's extreme.
Yeah.
You would probably say that's like our ultra marathon runners. You don't do that for physical health necessarily. Okay, but so first off, can we separate adrenal fatigue out of just saying energy? Because we have that talk a lot.
Yeah. I mean, even as I step back and think, okay, here's this big giant topic of adrenal fatigue, and some people may have heard about that, other people not, but in the normal language of what people are saying, they're going to be talking about their energy, what they perceive as energy to do something. And as we've mentioned before, that's a very, very difficult word.
Well, that's why I'm asking you, do you separate it out if somebody says,
yeah, sure, because nobody means, how's my muscle cell, my myocyte intaking the glucose I ate and now transitioning that to ATP so that I can lift up this dumbbell, right? You don't think that way either when you go exercise. You just think, I'm in the mood to exercise.
Yeah.
Or I'm not in the mood. You wake up in the morning and we've got our watch gizmos and whatever that says your ready factor is a little low. Well, that's in that adrenal recovery. That's what that is. And I think the Garmin calls it the body battery. And
can I read something? So this is what, as you know, what doctor do most people go when they have an issue?
Dr. Google.
Dr. Google. So I went to Dr. Google.
Sorry, Mom. It used to be Dr. Mom.
Okay, so this is literally, WebMD, type in adrenal fatigue. It says the term adrenal fatigue was coined in 1998 by James Wilson, PhD, a naturopath and expert in alternative medicine. He described it as a group of related signs and symptoms, a syndrome, that result when the adrenal glands function below the necessary level. He says it's usually associated with intense stress and often follows chronic infections like bronchitis, flu, or pneumonia. This is interesting. Wilson says people with it may not have any physical signs of illness, but may feel tired, gray, in quotes, and have fatigue that doesn't get better with sleep. And then this is literally the next line. They also crave salty snacks.
I'll explain why.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's
Well,
classic.
let me read one more then. So, because Mayo says, Mayo Clinic, adrenal fatigue isn't an acceptable medical diagnosis.
Agree that
All right.
it's considered alternative.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's not like just a blanket one. Like, what's wrong
It's
with
not
the
like
kid?
saying hypertension.
Like a kid's got colic. Well, that just means we don't know why he won't shut up.
It is kind of like
time.
colic.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So not acceptable. It's a lay term applied to a collection of nonspecific symptoms such as body aches, fatigues, nervousness, sleep disturbances, and digestive problems. Blah blah blah. Signs and symptoms, which Mayo always lists: fatigue, body aches, unexplained weight loss, low blood pressure, lightheadedness, loss of body hair, skin discoloration, hyperpigmentation. So that must be the hype. So again, this is what people are seeing in Dr. Google. Energy. And so now tell us
Now just
tell us the
straighten
truth.
that all out.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. So I do, I go to Dr. Google all the time as well. And
For actual help or just to say what the landscape is?
Yeah, to see what the landscape is. And what I use to know what is the mainstream medical group doing is up to date. I don't know if I don't know why you would hear about that, but lots of hospitals or clinics might use up to date. So the idea is that, okay, a group of experts from Harvard, Mayo, whatever, are going to come together and write an article on fibromyalgia and say, this is what we think about it in summary, and adrenal fatigue and those kind of things. So Dr. Google is Dr. Google, but you just listed WebMD and Mayo.
Literally, they're like top. Yeah, I think if you get other sponsor things, they're the top.
Yeah.
Which I assume means they're.
Well, WebMD just got bought by one of the biggies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, so I'm sure they're paying money to be at the top, but it also just may be what people. I mean, Mayo Clinic. That's
a trusted name. Is what it is. Yeah, and so, but I get frustrated with that list of symptoms. Like, hey, this is not a normal or an accepted medical term, Mayo said. And it's a lay term for a group of symptoms. And that's exactly what a syndrome is. So any syndrome is basically, I like the word constellation. You look out there and there's a constellation of symptoms of body aches, of fatigue, of sleep disturbance, of mood issues, maybe more on the depressive side. And then, and how do you explain all that? Like, people just want to go to the doctor and say, explain this. Very frustrating. And we have talked about this especially with moms. Most moms don't have 10 kids, but even just having one or two, and you got 2 kids under 3 or 4, and maybe then there's the breastfeeding issue that disrupts the nighttime thing. Plus, you got to think about going back to work, and just, it never ends. And so it's our friend Steve Smith called it like there's 10 hoses coming out of you, and there's not very many hoses going in of replenishment of what we call restoration, true rest, not just relief, not just shutting off the valves of everything that you're spending on, but getting restored and that true restoration. So that, I just kind of described all of us,
Well, and that's where I'm wondering, back to the lay term or perspective. Like I talk so often, is it just one of these things where we say, okay, we're all going along and we're doing these things that are depleting us to some degree?
That's just normal. It's normal to, by the end of the day, you're depleted.
But we can do this or do the same things, and for whatever reason, mine manifests
right
in something else, and yours is in this adrenal thing. What is that triggering? What is that?
So what's the physiology going on underneath there? And this is going to relate to the salt thing, which, because
everybody out there who's addicted to salt is going to go, well, heck, do I have adrenal fatigue?
Well, so I spoke with somebody just this week, and here's the salt craving level is to this level. And there's a famous picture, it might have been even by James Wilson, of a guy who's at the beach bending over with a straw into the ocean.
Oh.
Like that level of salt craving. Not just, oh yeah, I like a few chips or something, but just a sense of I'm empty of this thing called salt. I've never felt that.
So we're going to say this is acute, like what is it they say if you eat ice, you might be iron or something?
Deficient, right? And
or if a kid's eating dirt.
There's a word for that I just forgot. I don't think there's a word for this. Well, hyponatremia, you can actually be salt And we do see that. And in our labs, if somebody is low in salt, sodium, then that's hyponatremia, and you will feel that. So
you told me, I don't think from any symptom, but one time you said, hey, just with the whole clean, eating, whatever, you may not
salt your food, in general. Because
how does that relate though to back with hunters and gatherers and stuff? Where were they?
Yeah. How does that relate? Salt in old Europe used to be money. Like if you owned a salt mine, the king took it, and that was.
But I mean, if you're off in the woods hunting and gathering, just from
they had to find a salt source. Well, that's weird. Animals finding a salt lick.
But that sounds like so God left us deficient of having it in the foods we would naturally eat.
Yeah, he left you deficient in food. He left you deficient in sleep. He left you deficient.
You're not hearing my. But I'm saying
essential fatty acids. You got to go eat them. There's a whole list of them.
So what is salt? What is the salt that we need naturally in, aside from going and find out to the ocean?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying where would you get it? Yeah. In a perfect scenario. Kind of like my question of where I used to say, what fish oil? When did we become deficient and need all this fish oil and stuff?
When we quit eating fish.
Okay. So salt. So if I'm getting nuts and berries and I kill a deer and some fruit.
Vegetables. I don't actually really know your good sources of sodium.
Iodine.
Well, no. Iodine is seafood. Kelp and seafood is where you get iodine, which is why iodine deficiency is so much more common in the middle part of the country.
It's a relevant question, and it's fine that we don't know if you don't know the answer, because if you're living in Colorado, we're the furthest away from the ocean. Yeah, and
it is relevant, and at the same time, it's nearly irrelevant because
it just is.
It's a worldwide. You go to the local organic store and you buy some kiwis. It could have been from Chile, it could have been from New Zealand, and it could have been from California. You don't look and you don't know.
Yeah.
And even more irrelevant is, well, maybe it was organic, but what kind of fertilizer do they use in Peru or Chile? You can't even know. Even if you wanted to go Google that one, you're not going to.
Well, then I want to say something important, I think. Okay. It is, I did a show yesterday on the Motive Show. It was episode 21 with my brother, and we were talking about that thing that lights you up.
Yeah.
Okay. And came to the point of me especially talking that I came to a point one time of we want to justify it. This is what lights me up because, and there's some things that, gosh, I feel called to do this. I don't know why. And I don't have to. This is just what I want to do.
Okay.
That's just, we don't always have to justify it. So over here, I'm going to make an analogy. If we say, gosh, you're finding, let's say you're doing labs on people and finding that, man, they're low in this and this and this. And if you give them, they up their salt and iodine and they all up their fish oil, the labs look better. And they go, well, Dr. James, what the heck? Where are we supposed to get that naturally? And you go, I'm not sure. Anyways, if you take these supplements and it helps, to that place, it's irrelevant as well. But it's an interesting question of how did we get to this point of being deficient in XYZ and needing this? You don't have to have all the answers to say, I don't know, but if you do this, we can get you better.
I think that's a good summary statement. And on one hand, shame on me for not knowing. We should ask Jane or go Google it or whatever. But there's an entire field now of food history. Like Michael Pollan, and he wrote Omnivore's Dilemma, and he wrote Cooked, and he wrote In Defense of Food and Food Rules, and just the story of how food became what it is today. How did we develop this industrialized food production system that has, it's kind of like the history of economy. How did economy fill in the nooks and crannies of how to go buy a yellow number 2 pencil versus whatever that meant 100 years ago to get a pencil? There's a little bit of a mystery there, and it's like, I don't know, but just go buy a number 2 pencil. That's all you need to do. And how it got there is a confusing thing. Right now, where we boiled all that down to is, eat your vegetables and do but do you have to go out and eat bok choy, or do you have to go out and get some romaine, or do you have to go out and get, I'm not sure.
Well, in this, do I need to go take a tablespoon of iodized salt and... Well, so if somebody's out there, so everybody's out there listening, and they're going, okay, so am I in here?
If they're in this constellation of syndrome of that's called fatigue, or achy and sleep. I'm going to come back to sleep. Sleep is a big one. And they are just intensely craving salt. That's a really big clinical clue that you could be in that world of adrenal.
So how often do you see that?
With the salt craving, like to that intent, I would say 10, 20% of those people that I would call, It's a question we ask all the time.
I am ignorant of it. Okay.
But let's describe.
And when you hear that, do you first think adrenal fatigue?
Oh yeah. Okay. Here's why. Because if you were to do a scan, like a Spock scan of your body, and say, okay, where's all the salt floating around in your body? And of course, there's some in the serum, in the blood, and then there's some here and there and everywhere. But where most of the salt is in the body at any one time is in your adrenal glands, which are where?
I have no idea.
Right on top of your kidneys. So they're sitting there on top of your kidneys.
Okay.
And that's where most of the sodium, the salt, is in your body at any one time.
How does it relate to adrenaline?
Well, so the adrenal glands produce several things. Adrenaline or epinephrine is that fight or flight response, right? Like you're getting ready to fight, so boom, here comes this adrenaline shower, and that's why it's called adrenaline. There's other things coming out of the adrenal gland, so that's why in medicine we don't call it adrenaline.
That one I'm just always enamored with. I mean, because I've gotten called, oh, you're an adrenaline junkie. You like mountain biking down fast, whatever. And I get that I'm feeling it. But the bigger one is coming around a corner, and I think there's a bear. Well, that's happened to me. And you get that. I'm amazed that the body can just flush with that feeling that is like tingly almost a nauseous aspect at the top end of it. And it's just awesome that the body can do that, preparing me to run like a bat out of hell.
It happened to me once. I almost fell out of a tree, and the falling back, like microcosm of a second, and it gives you that adrenaline to reach out and grab that branch that you are not going to ever let go of.
Well, heck, the dreams that people have of falling and wake up and okay.
And it's also why I think for me on a more common, there are some things that just trigger certain people. Like you and I might have talked about that before, but I can't walk around in sock feet because somehow that my feet feeling the sock and then feeling the hardwood floor triggers that cold sweat feeling. And if you...
That's pathology.
That's pathology.
You need to get that looked at.
And then that, the difficult conversation with your spouse as you're getting ready to fall asleep will 100% delay that sleep, right? You are just not going to fall asleep.
No, there's been, I shouldn't been a few times in my marriage where we've had that, and I got to go read or something. I just can't go. There's no way I can go to sleep.
Right, because now it's even worse because now you're just going to lay there and mull it over and mull it over and mull it over, and you just got to break the cycle. Well, go ahead.
Well, no, if you have adrenal fatigue like these folks, would that, I suppose that response would be numbed?
Well, it's both. Okay, so now we have to say how they get to adrenal fatigue because they overdid it first. They were hyper responsive, not numbed. But so if it's classically, the guy who's going to work and he walks around the corner and it's the colleague he just can't stand. And just like you had the response to the bear, he has the response to the colleague or the boss.
Okay.
Or
I do it to policemen. When you go by and you're even if I'm not speeding, I go, because you expect,
Yes, so imagine there's policemen on every single block. It would be an exhausting trip for you.
So are you going to put not stress, as you would say, a bad response to stress at top of the list for adrenal?
Yeah, well, it's we don't use the word bad, right? This is very you did not control your response to the bear. That wasn't bad. You didn't try to muster it up either.
I know, but it's like PTSD as opposed to like post-traumatic stress. If I relive it over and over and over, I'm wearing down my adrenal, as opposed to the why don't
zebras get ulcers. Right. Yeah, you just go back to eating your grass.
Because the term I keep hearing, and this is just from a personal development standpoint for everybody, we should do one on PTSD because the opposite, not the opposite, but is post-traumatic growth. Can you go through that thing? And
it's an open mindset
and learn. Yes, Carol Dweck mindset. Can you recover?
Same thing. So now you're getting. This is showing people how complex this is that we all take for granted.
As everything
is. So here's the simple model. Like you got to have
the name of the show. It's complex.
We're going to complex it. So you can't walk around thinking, okay, I'm going to calm down my stress response when I almost slip on the ice there, when I see my boss. Or for the exhausted mom, it's the pile of laundry. Just boom, triggers her and she crumbles, or she goes into a fight or flight response. She's not thinking about it. I'm not thinking about it when I see certain patients I've told you before, like they just make me nervous. Like I either want to impress them or they get under my skin or something, and it's like a sweat, and you start dripping. So and I think one way to think about this is life, or this response, this subset of life, is as a rubber band. So let's just define the rubber band of Kevin Miller, and the two options that this rubber band can't have is broken, or like too far outstretched and now it's broken. That's called dead. Or completely zero stretch. That's also called dead, right? Like there's no life of breathing. You don't get to turn your body off, power down or whatever. Even with sleep, it's very complex metabolism going on with sleep. So the band is always at some stretch, always. Now, when you wake up in the morning, you should have recovered overnight and you're ready to wake up and go make breakfast and get the kids going and do your day, and you're stretched. Like you need to perform. We talk about that all the time. I want to start my day and perform. Well, that's a certain stretchiness of your rubber band.
Yeah.
And then you're going along, and in this particular time, like your daughter had the little fender bender the other day, and she didn't want to drive again. She's like, I need to step back. And okay, well, let's say you coming in, and in your case, you pass a cop. So your heart rate, your sweat rate, your whatever, even though you're carrying the same load, you just stretched more.
Right.
So now imagine, and everybody's going to get this who's in the adrenal fatigue. Now let's just say you stretch all day, every day like that, and then you go home at night and you're not doing the hard work of true relaxation, the hard work of restoration, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, I didn't get my stretch back. I'm a little tired, and it's harder to hold. Like I'm always thinking of a rubber band holding, 10 pencils. And you're like, gosh, it's hard. I feel like I'm holding 12 pencils now. I'm overstretched to hold 10 pencils. And then each day it feels like to hold the same amount of pencils, you're overstretched. It's like it was Bilbo Baggins saying, I feel like too little butter spread over too much toast. Yeah. And that feeling of overstretched, you're thin, and that rubber band is getting a little thinner and a little thinner. We've all taken a rubber band and not broken it, but you felt it give. Like one of the fibers just broke. Okay, now so it's this continuum. So everybody has adrenal strain. It's strain. And what's the response to that? You need to go to bed tonight. Maybe you need to fast. Maybe you need to not fast. Maybe you need to go to the beach. Maybe you need some broccoli, right? All of these things.
Well, I'm thinking, or maybe you need to resolve that bad response to stress.
Stop passing the cop. Just don't go there. Or choose to not freak out about a cop.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because we need to do one on PTSD, because I've been reading and dwelling on that more. That how can I, if the circumstances can't change or are not going to, or I don't want them to, how can I be weller?
That's right. Because this is PTSD. That's the thing. So adrenal strain has the arm over here. It's the HPA axis is what this and what does that mean? So H is the hypothalamus in your brain. Just under the thalamus, if everybody's picturing their brain physiology out there, right? And then the pituitary, which is just south of that again. Pituitary is kind of right behind your eyeballs. And the hypothalamus is going to send out some hormone chemical signals to the pituitary. The pituitary is going to respond to that. And the pituitary sends out its ACTH and these other hormone. That's how the system works to hit the adrenals. The adrenals respond with several kinds of hormones out there. And this is always on, all the time. Your rubber band is always clamping down to hold something tighter, or it's giving a little bit to put some more stuff in there so that we can accomplish something. Always. Like it doesn't, so people can't think like a robot, like We watch Star Wars, C-3PO. He says, I think I'm going to power down and get some rest. He just shuts off.
Yeah.
And plugs into the wall.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
It's funny you're saying that. I woke up this morning, and get my phone down to check my stats and whatever. My phone's near dead and it's plugged in. Of course, the other end was not plugged into somebody had unplugged it. And how often, there we go. Do people get up and think I slept, I should be good, and I'm just
well, that's right. So 10 hoses out.
Yeah.
And what is the main fuel to get your stretchiness back, to get some pull back in?
Okay, but I do want to ask, and I was trying to look it up and see what WebMD and what Mayo are going to list it as, because what causes it. I actually did not see that. Usually they're going to put down what they think the causation is,
if it's a real diagnosis.
Well, okay, maybe that's why they don't.
I think that's why they don't.
Yeah, they really don't say what. Literally, I'm looking at the list. It doesn't say. So.
Let me finish the connection to PTSD, because the brain, hypothalamus, pituitary, you're in the brain. So now let's just say that it makes sense that, if we use Afghanistan or, a bomb explodes, and of course that's just like you and the bear and me falling out of a tree. So shower with adrenaline, just boom. And at the same time you get bonked on the head with air. That's the concussiveness of the bomb. It just bangs your head. Now your head flops over, and the physiology of a concussion at the same time as this adrenaline, and the body will never forget that. I can remember almost falling out of a tree when I was 10, like it's yesterday, right? You can remember that bear feeling. Everybody can remember, the first responder effect and all of that. So in the military, first responders, all these guys have such a higher level of PTSD because of this.
Well, hold on. Now we're back into the PT. We keep hitting on.
Well, adrenal fatigue is a version of PTSD in a sense.
But you don't have PTSD from falling out of the tree. You have an emotionally hooked memory, but you're
that's
not
right.
You're
that's
not
right.
You're not reliving it and
that's
not
right.
able to sleep and wake up. Do you wake up every night from a sweat and
that's right.
fell out of a tree again and it's wrecking you?
That's very right. So in that case, that was my brain could say, oh my gosh, I almost fell out of a tree. How stupid is that? I'm not going to do that again. And I climb down the tree and I go on and play. I go right back to my business. I release that stretchiness of what I had just done.
And hopefully you kept climbing trees and you were a better tree climber and more cognizant. And
that's right. I was in a growth mindset.
And now you can do it with much more peace.
I can. But some people could say, I had a bad episode when I was 10 and I can't go near trees. I can't even be in a forest. Or a bigger one is swimming. I almost drowned. I'm never going to get in the water again. Skiing. How many? Well,
this is going to sound bad, but isn't that a less healthy response?
Your best buddy got his head blown off in front of your eyes. That's not something it's harder to turn off or to just go on, right? And we tell people like that all the time. Just like we're throwing out these stereotypes. I'm so sorry, but if the wife is just she looks at that fourth pile of laundry and she just breaks into tears, and the husband says, "What's the big deal? Just do the laundry."
And what you're supposed to say is, honey, calm down. That works every time.
Down.
Yeah.
Right. What you're supposed to do is say, let me do the laundry.
I know.
But the complexity of this. Now let's imagine you didn't get good sleep last night.
Yeah.
You're operating on 4 or 5 hours. Now let's imagine your magnesium's low, your vitamin D is low, your omega is low, and all the healing response of just the raw biochemistry of recovering. And then Kevin Miller wants to say, well, just get over it and, have a learning episode or a learning response. I'm like, yeah, I agree. But the reality in the world is it doesn't happen that way even for you sometimes. That if you had gone around the corner, the bear had happened, and then you had slipped and fallen, there would be a different story. Or the bear mauled you. There would be a different story.
But to what I think my focus or I'm interested in what you said there, because I literally wrote about this or was interviewed recently or something like that. I have a lot of kids. I have a higher possibility, just not pessimistic, of seeing one of my children die.
Sure.
That's a possibility for anybody who has one kid, but I have 9 and now grandkids. There's a higher possibility. It sounds so bad, but in a way I want to be preparing myself now to deal with that as healthfully as possible. It will be tragic. It will be traumatic. But a year from now, I mean, we know the stats there. People who have a child die. There's a high percentage that get divorced, that commit suicide, that whatever. I want to be able, how can I be as healthy as I can and vibrant and able for my other kids?
As your best friend, I would just say, you got 9 of them. What's the big deal? Just get over it.
I tell them that. Well, that's why I had so many. They're expensive. That's terrible. Somebody out there, so sorry. If you've lost a kid. That was very, but yes, that is.
But we are actually saying that funny because that's not what happens. It hurts.
It's going to, but we saw somebody here in town. They have 12 kids and they had one die, and people were almost dismayed at their recovery, their ability and speed of recovery. And they were very faith-filled people. But I'm not going to put it all on that. They had to do a lot to be able to. We have closer friends that lost their little girl.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly traumatic. They came out ultimately, I'd say, with post-traumatic growth.
Yes. But there's a
lot
cost
of
that. They also had to, and this gets right back to the nitty gritty, the base foundation of what we talk about all the time. Why would you grow? Why would you care? Why would you prepare yourself for trauma? Because we believe there's something even bigger and better on the other side.
Well,
there's something worth me, instead of I could go crawl in a hole and die and bury my head in the sand and just, go watch Netflix and eat a bowl of ice cream. But even though it hurts, that stretchiness, to be becoming a better rubber band that can handle more pencils and that can actually recover better. Because part of the problem, it's not, people say, well, I just need to just let me offload some of these pencils. Mm-hmm. And I would say you're not even recovering well. You're just that's what John calls relief. It's not restoration. Restoration is when you actually offload all those pencils and you go to bed and you sleep after having done the work of good sleep preparation rhythmically every day over time. And everybody else says, yeah, right, that sounds, and I'm saying, no, it has to happen within the context of a job and a marriage and raising kids. And we had a little bit of a rough conversation last night because the 9-year-old is getting frustrated with me dictating some lunchtime requirements. And at the same time, in contrast to the other two who did just fine in school, kind of liked it, we've never had a kid that said, I don't like school. Like, I don't know how to respond to that. And I feel, and if I'm also now making you eat some carrots or something, and now I don't like school even more, and it's your fault. Well, the response is, well, let's put a ding dong in there, right? Like somehow make school. And I'm just thinking, the complexity of the problem of this is so hard.
Yeah, and what you said a minute ago, do I want to hold more pencils? Maybe. Do I want to hold the ones that I have with more peace? What I don't want, this is my mission. Okay. I don't want to decline every day to where at some point I can only hold one pencil. That's all I got. I want, how can I hold the ones that I care about, that I desire, that I find joy in, and hold them well and with peace and grace, and because so many of us, we're doing things that we want to do. We want to, again, we got an aspiring group. Jody, who has the 10th kid, they want those kids. They love those kids. They love, and she wants her body back. They love adventure. They love fitness, and so
I've heard that from so many moms. I was fine until that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th kid, and it's like my snapback, my recovery.
Yeah.
Like that's what all these R words, recuperation, recovery, recreation, is. So what is the main fuel into you for adrenal rest and recovery? Number one, absolutely, without a doubt, is sleep. Oh. Restful, restorative,
I was going to say,
effective.
These days, when we say sleep, we have to say quality sleep.
Yeah. Getting quantity 8 hours in the bed, more than 7 hours of sleep. If people need numbers to say, well, just tell me what I need, more than 6.
And if you
probably more than 7.
I wish I knew what to recommend. I mean, if you want to know what your sleep is doing, I'm tempted to still say the Aura ring is what you're wearing.
Yeah, I'd probably put them. There's two factors. Is the oxygenation, and where we live in Colorado, you have to know your oxygenation, and so that's in the overnight pulse ox, not the finger thing that you just check, that they check real quick when you go to the doctor's office, but the one that records overnight. Now you can buy those for $170 on Amazon or something, and it costs about $150 if the sleep medical company does the test on you. I actually think you and I should do it as a baseline. I've never done it, and let's go halvesies on buying that thing and just see what because the watches aren't good. Mine does.
Well, now I'm doing the watch. I got the Garmin. My wife has the Fitbit.
But is it checking pulse ox?
I don't think so. And I also don't trust the results.
I don't either.
Those things were made for fitness. I got this Garmin. It's made for GPS. It's
GPS and pedometer.
Aura was made for sleep. Now I am wearing right now that I've been testing out the Whoop, WHOOP. And they talk about it like sleep like Aura. And it's I need to have you look at it. I think it really makes the Garmin look lame, I think.
In terms of how much it's breaking down the sleep
down and the consistency and my ability to look at it. But so you're saying that, but can folks wherever they're at, can they just look up sleep tests and try to find one in their area?
Oh yeah. No, they can't. It usually needs a doctor's order.
But it's probably going to cost more to do that than to get the pulse ox that records overnight.
It's $150 for a one-time overnight test, or you buy. It's like the brand is WellU or something. I'm not super confident in those things, but I think what it does is it allows a person to compare themselves to themselves. It gives you a little bit of a pattern. So don't think about it. So if it's abnormal, then go get the doctor stuff. Yeah.
So, and that is, I appreciate with any of these monitoring devices, even if they are not 100% accurate in and of that moment, hopefully they give consistent readings to show you when you're higher or lower on your own trajectory.
Yeah. Patterning over time. So it's the nighttime oxygenation level. And then the other sleep parameters. I mean, this is a huge area of research, right? And commercial research. People want to sell you something, and it's coming. And the Apple Watch is probably another good one that does pretty good detective work. And this trillion sensor economy we've talked about before, where pretty soon the doc or even right now, I can, if you have an Aura ring, I can log in and see your stuff if you open it up to me,
right.
and I can pull it up and see what you've been doing. And we do that on a coaching platform. So Jane usually does that to just help people understand how they're sleeping and the impact of this, because if your sleep grade is low, you're not restoring.
Yeah.
And then people, they say, oh, but I'm doing fine. I only need 6 hours a night. And you're fine until you're not fine.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going to say using these things that are measuring biomarkers has shown me how often my conscious awareness is wrong. That when I think, it seemed like it was a good sleep. I feel like I'm doing well, and that these will show me, man, that I'm low. And other days, it'll show.
Let me key in on that, because I don't want to offend people. A lot of people will go to the doctor and say, I know my body.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I know my hand like the back of my hand. You do, but I bet you can't tell me a thing about your, metacarpals or how many bones are in your wrist or what they look like.
Walking with you enough and having these tests done, and regardless of what I feel, if the test shows that, man, I'm deficient here, and you see it manifest.
Now, at the same time, we treat humans. We don't treat tests. So it's the bothness of
I don't trust the human awareness of.
But the test is not going to tell me, how's your energy today? We do not have an energy test. How's your mood today? Are you depressed, anxious?
And I'm with you here, but I want people to hear too that when we hear that, we think it's a specific bucket of energy, and I may have gotten a poor night's sleep. I may have had a difficult conversation with my wife, and my kid had a car wreck, and everything to where right now my energy would normally be low. But I happen to look at my email, and I just got a check that's bigger than anything I've seen in my life. Man, my energy feels great. Well, come on. So that's
right.
I just overrode it with
good news,
happiness. Yeah, good news. But it doesn't mean that my body's actually in a good place.
You're right.
Well, I'm helping it with that.
The chemical of the good news.
Medicine of the good news. But
that's right.
But I still got,
okay.
if I got.
So this is so big, and I hope people can catch a glimpse of. Everybody knows this. If you wake up in the morning, like especially my third kid, if we're going to the dentist or he has to get his blood drawn, I don't tell him. I flat out nearly tell a lie. And our Quest lab draw area was in Safeway. I said, we're going to Safeway. I got to do something. We walk all the way to the back of the store. We're almost going in, and I say, and I bend down, I look him in the eye and say, we're going to get labs.
But you get a donut afterwards.
But then we'll get a treat right afterwards. And you don't have any time to be afraid. We're right here. Immediately there's tears or whatever. Okay. But if we're going to Disneyland, I'm going to milk that for months, because whatever problem is way worse if we're getting our blood drawn. Like if you have a toothache, it's way worse if you got bad news, or if it's tax time or whatever. Okay, so that reality, this is the placebo effect. This is the reality of what people sense as their own energy.
One of my old cycling coaches, he would do that with climbing. You're going to hit Pikes Peak. You guys are riding up. Just don't look up. Just don't look up at what you have to accomplish.
Asphalt looks like asphalt.
Just right, the guy in front of you. Okay.
Well, yeah, even the concept of Mount Everest, like people who want to lose 100 pounds and they look up at Mount Everest, I'm like, no, we're gonna pick a path, one step at a time, and we're gonna calculate in 1 month. You know how you hike? We have hiked up Pikes Peak multiple times together, and if you don't ever look at the path, you fall off the path, but if you don't ever look out, you don't ever get the view. Yeah. So then you stop, you take a breath, you look out, like, wow, look how far we came. And for my youngest one, who at the time was like 11, 12, 10 or so when we did that.
Or less. Yeah.
And yeah.
Less.
He was 9.
Oh, no, it wasn't your youngest.
10.
Your middle, right?
He got such, wow, look.
He was awesome.
Like, look at what you've climbed. Yeah. And he was the bounciest one when we got down.
Tigger.
So all of this is going on in this HPA axis in what we might call adrenal strain, adrenal fatigue, and it is very real. Now, in the lab also, and this is where if people think they're in that kind of category where you might need a doc to help you figure things out, what are the labs that we do? Well, cortisol, which is coming from the adrenal gland as well, cortisol is like cortisone and prednisone and those, that's a steroid. Like all these are, steroid just is another word for a kind of a hormone in a sense. And cortisol is that fight or flight hormone. And the body, as it's, think of resources going in the top, kind of your mouth, and all of this is built on, you already mentioned it before, fat, essential fatty acids are the building blocks of what becomes hormones. So if you're not eating good fat, if you're still stuck in a fat-free mindset, or you're eating bad fat, which usually is what that means, then you're not putting in the resources to even do these things.
I mean, if I had to guess, the percentage of Americans who are getting the good fat allotment they should have in a given day has got to be so few.
Would agree. We are a carb-based mentality. A lot of people are still stuck in a low-fat mindset, and then when they do get some fat, they're not going out for the avocados and the coconut and the grass-finished animals and the small fatty fish, and they're not doing the
I've been eating
supplements.
sardines lately. Does anybody eat sardines? I don't know.
I'm always amazed at how many cans are in the store. They're always there.
That's true. Somebody must be eating them. Me.
My family's not quite there yet. I'm not going to push on that button.
I said me. I didn't say my family.
Good for you.
I have that one kid who likes them, I think, out of all those. Yeah.
You either eat the cans or you pay somebody to squish them in a pill, or you're deficient.
All right.
Right. And that's where if people, and again, if you wait until you feel the lack of energy or the give in your rubber band, and I know that's hitting somebody right now, it's like, I'm there.
A lot. Yeah. Probably too many.
Probably too many. And
because again, we're talking to people who want to hold a lot of pencils.
That's right. You are performance based. These are great pencils.
Yeah.
These are worth time and money and effort.
Yeah.
And if you go to the doctor and say adrenal fatigue strain and my rubber band's breaking, and you're going to get an antidepressant.
I was going to say exactly, which is going to help you or disable you from holding More pencils.
Perhaps. Now, not to diss the medicines, but it's just not the best, most elegant solution.
Well, but then we got to come back to where you would say that is a temporary solution for an
Band-Aid.
acute problem. It is not a long term. And
these days, will wind up worse.
And these days, if you're put on, name some Prozac,
Zoloft and Paxil and Prozac and Lexapro,
which are an SSRI, serotonin.
Yeah, they just enhance more, give you more serotonin.
But if you have a doc prescribe that, just like blood pressure medication, they generally figure they're prescribing that and you're going to take that from now on.
Right. Always ask a doctor, what's my exit strategy? I understand why I might need this medicine now for a season, but I'm not born with a deficiency of Prozac. It's the right time, right place. Okay, I might need this right now to get me over a rough patch. It's like a bridge over the mud in the field. Okay, but what's on the other side of the bridge? Forever medicine? You know, how do I might need a statin for my high cholesterol, but how do I get my cholesterol to go back to normal and those kind of things? Yeah. That's a very legit question. That's not alternative medicine or anything. And most often the doctor will say, well, let's just see how it goes. And there isn't a conscientious exit strategy. If there was an exit strategy, what would that strategy be? And I would say, everything we've talked about for 60 shows. It is the essence of functional medicine. Yeah. How do I be becoming a little bit better? Which in this case means, how do I replenish my sense of energy?
Can I, for us to end on there, it's interesting. I got to divulge for people that different than most podcast hosts. Randy's a doctor, and we're always doing this between patients. He's got to go. Yeah. So our shows, it's probably good because we've probably talked for 3 hours. Can we reside somewhat on, if you feel like this is something you are dealing with, it's a great time to sit down and audit what is happening in your life and what areas could be keeping you from recovery. Because it's not that kids are bad, or a job is bad, or a relationship is, well, maybe they are. How are they bad? Are you recovering? Are you stressing? Are you worrying when you go to bed at night? Are you stressed as soon as you wake up?
That's right. However you are responding is how you've trained yourself to respond. And you got that way, and you can get to a different way.
I agree. But can we also say that you might have inadvertently trained yourself
inadvertently,
to respond?
not on purpose.
Yeah.
And some people are genetically predisposed.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of thousand variations of circumstances. You know, you can't kick your three-year-old out of the house, but you might need to kick your 30-year-old out of the house. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that before.
I've trained myself to worry about money. And I have learned, and I can look at my bank account and realize, obviously the amount of money is not the problem. I worry no matter what.
That's right. And a lot of people will invent yourself a reason to worry.
Yeah.
And that's a mindset. But it's so subtle. It's so insidious, maybe even. Sure. It's inadvertent. It's all of those kind of things. It is part of life. It goes back to how do you sleep? How do you breathe? How do you exercise? What are the rhythms of your life? Mm-hmm. And that is the answer. You know, what do we do about this? And concretely, I'd say, for my patients, I'm going to say, well, how bad is it? If we do the lab test and it's like, oh my gosh, you're getting ready to break. And people call it a breakdown. They call it a nervous breakdown. They call it depression. They call it, back in the day, you got Valium and all these kind of things, which don't do that. But alcohol, I just need to settle down. I need a nightcap. I can't fall asleep. All of these things are cultural. They're so common. Take a step back. If I wish there was call me. I'm the doctor. We'll talk through it. There's a way to do that. Go to the website and all that, but that's expensive and time consuming and all of that. But be aware of it, I think, is the main thing right now.
And I just come back to what you say, that ultimately, if we can, I'll give it an umbrella. You're saying if this is you are not recovering. You're not recovering. What is causing you? Yeah. First. What is causing you to not recover? Is it sleep? Mm-hmm. Is it a bad response to stress, a PTSD from whatever? Is it
our people? I bet there's people out there that over-exercise. I just got to exercise my way out of this. And you're digging your hole further.
Yeah. Well, that's what Jane got me on was, because it was out of, well, whatever. Yeah. Whatever it is. What is causing you to not recover?
That's a good talk.
Okay, friends, some of you should have found some hope here in looking to address your adrenal wellness. It's something that we'd all be well served to be attentive to. We're all on the spectrum, but some people can fall over the edge and find themselves needing to really advocate accordingly. Friends, thank you for tuning into Self-Helpful, where I curate the sea of new personal development materials and help you integrate wisdom into your life, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others.